Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nish Parikh. I'm a CEO and co founder of Rangam, where empathy drives innovation every single day with the mission to promote employment for everyone inclusive of people with all abilities and, of course, people with disability, PWD. My guest today is Sri Ravindra Singh, who is the CEO of Skill Council for Person with Disabilities. Ravindra ji is experienced quality assurance and CSR implementation head with a demonstrated history of working in mining and metal industry before he took charge of SCPWD. He is skilled in talent management, business development, organizational development, employee engagement, and business strategy, and that's what we are all passionate about at Rangam. With that, Ravindra ji, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Nish, for having me over. It's indeed a pleasure to be part of the discussions that Rangan brings to forth. And I've happened to see a few of them and very, very pertinent, relevant discussions in context to the current realities in life. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ji, again. So, Ravindra ji, let's start with tell us a little bit about your journey from metal and mining to helping millions of people with disability and some of the great work you are doing at SCPWD. Tell us how that journey.
So, first visibility of disability that I got while working in mining industry itself is that
Yeah,
disability is integral to life. It will happen to people over a period of time.
yeah,
Some, unfortunately, are born with it, but most acquire it over a period of time, including me. If I'm not wearing my glasses, I'll not be able to even possibly see what is being on the screen and maybe drive around and things like that. Disability is primarily an account of some kind of a barrier, perceived reality, real, whatever you might put it that way. So, having seen aging miners, etc., over a period of time, not able to do much beyond in their life post retirement. Started doing some work for them, and that's how the journey began. And then now I'm here with the Skill Council for Persons with Disability, addressing the wider diaspora. What we do here is predominantly work very closely with the industry to understand what are the job roles where our differently abled youth will find opportunities, pick up those job roles, and with the help of subject matter experts, we align those job roles to address the training needs specific with a particular different ability that a candidate has. It is an extensive process, requires time and requires a deep study. Post that getting done, then it is taken to the government for approval, and post approval by the National Skill Qualification Committee, these job roles are then mapped on and put on a roster called National Qualification Register, from where people can pick up these job roles and train on them, and people who are trained on these will then get a certificate, which is the Government of India certificate available to them. They can take it to the industry and various places and benefit for that. So that's broadly that we do.
no, that is so amazing, and being in the staffing industry for over 20 years, we I can see how this can be impactful, and this is needed, right? Upskilling is the key, and then what your initiatives in helping individuals acquire those skills, and in some cases, I'm pretty sure the skills are like kind of transferable skills. So once they learn something here through your program and through the training, they will able to leverage that training in their career and help them with the career path. So that's a traditional, all that's what you in your organization do. Along with that, any thoughts on any new initiatives in the space of disability? And also, I have started learning a lot more from some of our partners in India in the space of neurodiversity also. So some of those initiatives, if you can share some of your latest and
So,
greatest.
on the
Yeah.
neurodiversity front, we have been trying to look at what are the specific diversities can be aligned to a specific trait. For example, a small example that I can share is like
Mhm.
if you look at people on the spectrum, the autism spectrum. So progressively, it's been found that if they are doing tasks which are intense but repetitive, and not requiring too much of a human interface on a day-to-day basis beyond the regular whatever work environment requires, they do brilliantly. I
Yeah.
mean, if you take up courses like coding, you take it into cybersecurity, as simple as getting into the hospitality sector, where you have people laying tables. You have people on the spectrum laying one table, laying 100 tables. They are laid exactly the same degree of perfection. So it's only a matter of identifying what suits well. It's like, I mean, when we were in class 10th, everybody doesn't become an engineer, everybody doesn't become a doctor. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to identify where you want to be, what you want to do. Unfortunately, India, it is only at the age of 35 you figure out what you want to do in life. Before that, you were doing what your parents are making you to do, and either be an engineer, doctor, CA, whatever it is. Since that later stage in life, you're like, okay, no, I want to do something different. Like case in with me, started with banking, then into mining. As now, I know that yes, this is the place that I want to be, which is the skill development, and PWD is my preferred area. So one has to identify what fits an individual. And the individual is no different from any other individual. It's just a matter of finding the right fitment. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. And in our world of work, when we work with people with disability, as you rightly said, I call this, let's focus on their strength, help identify their strength. And another thing which we always talk about is how do we help them manage their weaknesses, right? So focus on strength, manage the weaknesses. And then third piece, when it comes to hiring people with disability, we always talk about it's our responsibility or it's our job that, some of the individuals have got great training from the organization like yours, and once they get the training, how do we map their strength with the right job? So you are absolutely right. Any thoughts on the COVID has how COVID has impacted? In our earlier conversation, I learned from you it was really just eye-opening concept. So tell us a little bit about how COVID has impacted people with disability in a positive as well as somewhere in a challenging way.
So, Nish, you're absolutely correct. COVID has had a widespread impact across the globe for everybody. It's been a very, very sad and a serious thing. In fact, just this morning, I was speaking to a friend of mine, a brilliant OD trainer, and we were trying to do something for him. Was not able to reach out to him for last more than a month or so, and came to know that he was in ICU. So, I mean, it's like very, very challenging times for everybody. And it has been exceptionally challenging time for our persons with disabilities because they face a very unique challenge. Many of them are not able to visit the healthcare practices on their own, and the COVID restrictions require you to travel on your own and maintain 6 feet distance, trying to make the ecosystem in the healthcare and the society to understand, look, this person needs to go with somebody, cannot travel on their own or cannot. So those challenges have been there. But something very beautiful has happened. Last year, March, the entire world became disabled. Travel stopped,
Yeah.
businesses stopped, schools stopped, education stopped. It's like somebody's tied your hand, feet, everything, and isolated you on an island. Then you start realizing that how do I get out of it? And that's how we had these internet conferences, which we are leveraging today and doing a workshop.
Yeah.
So it showed the world that disability is just a barrier. That's it. We have to identify what the barrier is. We have to identify how to overcome that barrier, and everybody is mainstream. So I look at
Love it.
it positively. I look at it very, very positively. I keep telling the industry, look, you people were disabled, you overcame that through technology, through various efforts. It's as simple as that for everybody else. The person has got a different ability. Leverage it.
Ravindra ji, I love it. Everybody has a barrier, and the entire world became disabled. That is so powerful, and I truly admire your thought leadership and all the great work you do, and that messaging right to the society, to the corporate leader is so important. And I that's what I just heard from you. We just heard from you that you know it, it has created this even play field for people with disability and with the people without disability. And now it is corporations and the leaders and the executives and their initiatives within the organizations, that is going to be important role or important action we would like to see. So, talking about corporations, Ravindraji, please share what steps have the central government and the various state governments are taking to support integration of people with disability at the workplace in a more formal programs and in corporate settings.
So when you look at the government ecosystem, the government has mandated certain a number of job roles to be identified and kept for persons with different abilities to ensure the differently enabled people get integrated into the mainstream workforce. So it is happening in a twofold kind of a manner. One, okay, this number of persons with different abilities have to be given a job. They're given a job. What will you do with them? Many times the organizations do not know. When we come to the corporate side, the challenge is slightly different. On the corporate side, most of the organizations are wanting to do it. A lot of them have figured out how to do it. A lot of them are still struggling. Those that have figured out how to do it and have been doing it for a long time, very few have actually made a strong headway into it. And the challenge is not in hiring the person with different ability. The challenge is how does the industry or the organization and the other people in the organization integrate with this person? Because there are communication challenges, there are other different challenges that are linked to the special ability the candidate has. So what we are doing is we are trying to develop with the help of the industry a job role called job coaches for inclusivity. It will be an exclusive job, maybe part of the HR, maybe part of the diversity and inclusion setup of the organization, and a job which earlier some NGO would step in to do would be done in a professional manner by this individual or set of individuals. This person understands the challenges faced by both the industry, the other candidates, and this candidate, and helps bridge that gap to make everything function smoothly. They also help modify, amend the communication and other methodologies so that everybody is on board on the same thing. My second next challenge, which I am now working on, is trying to work with the industry to figure out, okay, look, you have taken people, and most of them come in at the entry level jobs. Person has been working for, let's say, 3, 4, 5 years. The person is now ready to move on to the next job role. What is the job role that you identify? How do you measure this person's abilities? Because every person's ability is different. I mean, somebody writes with the left hand, somebody writes with the right hand. Doesn't mean that everybody with right hand will only get promoted. So you need to identify what is the tangible, measurable quantity that you're going to measure to ensure this person is ready to go to the next job role. Then to train the person, because training a person with special ability require also special ability. So to plan that and then plan the next job role. The next job role, which usually is a supervisory job role, throws up a new gamut of challenges. Here, the person was working individually, working with his peer group, and maybe discussing and interfacing with the supervisor. Suddenly, person is leading a team, and the team has got a leader who is differently abled.
Yeah.
How does that function? It's a beautiful scenario if you look at it from the reality in life. It's like an ideal thing. One would like to look at it happening in real life, and it happens. Many places it is there.
Yeah.
Some people have figured out how to do it. We are still trying to define the parameters, processes, etc. I'm sure we'll be able to arrive at that place. The crowning glory would be if I have people who have moved up the ladder and become the MD, CEO, chairperson of an organization being differently able. And there's nothing that can stop them. I'm 100% sure it will happen over a period of time.
Yes, I 100% agree with you on every point you made. Let me just summarize what I heard. One is when you mentioned that every one of us is connected to someone with disability. So every one of us almost have a good faith efforts to hire people with disability. We don't know how to do it. So that's the one challenge. Which then second is, it's not just hiring, it's sustaining, right? What you just mentioned, it's about how do we create that environment, how do we create that equitable environment and empathetic environment where they are not only successful and they are thriving, but also we are helping them with the career path, which you just mentioned.
Absolutely.
That's a career path is the key. And and one of the other thing you mentioned, the job coaches and that working with NGOs. What I have personally seen in last 15 years of my journey in US and kind of globally, is these NGOs are doing some amazing work. They understand, they work with organizations like you, and they prepare people with disability for their career and their next job opportunity. But one of the thing which we have started championing is, NGOs, they face challenges, or they have limitations, understanding the HR and regulations and procurement. As we are working with global companies, how do we make that bridge? Because companies are interested in scaling up their program, but those are the things which is now we have started talking about it. So thank you for sharing your views on how COVID has impacted, and how people with disability and some of your work. Any thoughts on a little bit more on sustainability side? Because as you know, you just briefly mentioned, but helping individuals sustain this job. So tell us a little bit about your program, or how you are developing the job coaches and how they are supporting organizations, because that's very very important. And I would love to have our viewers understand that whole concept, so that if they are considering, this will help them open up those doors of opportunities for people with disabilities.
Okay. So the job coach for inclusivity would be an individual. Uh, my dream is that one day it becomes an integrated, it's a course that becomes integrated into the management institutions, that becomes a full-fledged line growth vertical. This is primarily focusing on how, first is understanding the challenges that a person faces, understanding the legislations and legalities behind the various things, because that is important for you to understand. You have to be within the inverted commas of the laws of the land, and then working with the industry to ensure the interface happens effectively. All the health and safety parameters are aligned to this individual. The accessibility components are a given fact. The in the health and safety, if you're looking at something like the evacuation procedures, etc., if they're involved in certain organizations where the risk factor is, if they're in manufacturing or something, how do you locate, which position are you locating this individual as compared to the emergency exit, so on and so forth. So that's one part of it. And then is the communication, because many times there are communication challenges which are there, and you have somebody who is speech and hearing impaired. Let's say the person is going to the washroom. How does he inform people around him that he's gone to the washroom? And suppose, God forbid, something happens, and he's the only person in the washroom. If he's not come out of the washroom for next 5 minutes, 10 minutes, what happens? How is the alarm raised? So it's as simple as that. Those components need to be thought out, built into the entire thought process of this individual who is supposed to help support the integration of the entire thing. And then interface with every level of the organization, right from policy making to implementation on the inclusion agenda. That becomes a part of this individual's responsibility. So that's on
Beautiful.
the organized side.
Right.
We're also working now, trying to reach out to the unorganized part of the industry, where you're looking at the smaller retailers, smaller industries, when you're going to the tier 2, tier 3 towns. Challenge there is when I'm trying to train my persons with disabilities to find an accessible center in a tier 2 or a tier 3 town, at times becomes a challenge. A lot of beautiful training centers are available, but many a times they are not designed for to be accessible by persons with different
Yeah.
abilities. So we are we are envisaging and we are working on creating modular training centers. So these training centers are built out of containers or product even kind of things. So they have all the required facilities and features, including the accessibility component. And because they are portable and mobile, they can be taken as close as possible to the geography where the person is residing. So the traveling components come down. As a
Yeah.
result, the women participation is expected to go up in the entire training ecosystem. And that, when we are integrating it with the smaller retailers, smaller industries in tier two, three towns, the placements are going up. So if you look at it as an organization, I work with maybe 200 large, medium organizations who are on a regular interface with me. But if you ask me how many organizations have hired from you, it's more than 2,000. A lot of them are just 5 people, 10 people, 20 people kind of setup that are there. And they're also coming up now. They're realizing that there's nothing wrong. These people are equally capable as compared to anybody else.
Yeah.
And wherever we are having this one or two people joining in, they're finding that these people are a better resource in terms of discipline, in terms of productivity, and regularity. So these are the added features that are there. We are trying to take it beyond the organized corporation to the smaller industries, smaller geographies, because India is a vast country, and we can't restrict ourselves to only those larger pockets. So that's the approach that the council has.
Absolutely, and that is so true. I can literally see that how you are taking the training to people with disability and making the training accessible to people with disability with this whole mobile a concept. That is just a great for me to learn. And one of the other thing you mentioned, that hiring 2, 10, 20 people is not going to help us as a whole, as a society, when we have millions of people with disability. And in our world, I always when I talk to our corporate leaders, I always mention those initiatives are great, and I call these initiatives like 1, 2, or 5 people. But how do we change the hiring best practices? How do we make that a hiring strategy, right, around hiring people with disability? So how do we transform these initiatives to hiring strategies as an organization? You
So,
briefly touched. Sorry, go ahead.
so three things. I mean, it's a very interesting point that you raised, and this is something that I really talk about. Why
Yes, yes,
restrict only to hiring? This one sixth of the global population are your consumers also. I mean, it's
that's
not
right.
that you are only going to work with you. Please
That's
make
right.
your products friendly for them.
That's
I
right.
mean, automatic washing machine, cruise control, so on and so forth. They keep saying everybody uses it. They were developed for people with different abilities. So what
Yeah,
I'm trying to do also is working with AICT and other organizations so that I can bring in into their course curriculum itself that
yeah,
when you're designing buildings, when you're designing technology, when you're designing highways, you're designing anything and everything,
yeah,
consider that it is to be done for people who have different abilities, how
yeah,
they will interface and interact with that. So once you start having an all inclusive technology, the industry per
yeah,
se will start viewing it as an inclusive setup. So it has to be
yeah.
a comprehensive, just not HR. It has to be in everybody's
Agree.
thought. And industries
Agree.
have to start looking at it from the perspective, look, there are these differently abled people outside there. I asked a lot of my consumer companies, I mean, how many of your website apps, etc., are disabled friendly? They are going to
Yeah,
buy from you. How will they buy from you if they are not able to access your apps and your websites and technology?
yeah.
So
And the
that's something
beautiful
that we
thing, absolutely, absolutely. And Ravindraji, the beautiful thing is that when we make anything which is accessible, it's helping everyone. It's helping all of us, people with all abilities, people without disability. It just makes it easy. And it's just a matter of looking at the things in a different way. I just heard this example that there are steps and there is a ramp entering to the building. And during the winter, the person who was cleaning the snow started cleaning up the steps and not the ramp. And the person with disability is looking at it and say, hey, if you clean up the ramp, you will make it accessible to everyone, right? It's a basic
common sense.
concept, right? It's just looking at the things in a different way, more inclusive way, and that is so powerful. Before we conclude, I know you have beautiful, amazing initiatives for, especially in the rural area and semi-rural area. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's something which is also a huge
Okay.
challenge. At the same
So,
time, it's an opportunity for us to make an
So, as
impact.
a council, what we do is people who are aware of skilling ecosystem in the country, there are 37, 38 sector skill councils, each pertaining to a different sector. So, you have electronics, you have automobiles, you have healthcare, hospitality, agriculture, so on and so forth. So we work across all the councils. Currently, we are very actively engaging with 24 councils. Other councils also progressively we are going forward. And from them, we are working with their industries to understand what are the job roles in which our differently able youth will find jobs. There are close to 180 jobs that we have identified across these industries, and we have mapped them to different abilities. So we have locomotor disabled person, we have visual impairment, speech and hearing impairment. So the job roles are mapped across those, so leading to close to about 250 plus different qualifications which are existing, including six for intellectual disability, which is under development right now. So we have a wide array. My target is to have about 300 such qualifications ready by March, and possibly 500 next to next March, March 24. So idea is to have as many job roles available for our differently able young adults to pick up and find meaningful employment, livelihood.
That is so powerful, and that's truly what, as a workforce solution company, when we talk to these companies, that's a very common question they ask. So you are really tackling the root where companies are asking, what type of jobs, if I hire someone with disability, where would they be successful? Now again, we don't put them in the box, like, because as you mentioned earlier, everyone has different abilities. It's matter of focusing on that. So it's not a cookie cutter model, but still there are some evidences and proven track record of success, and that's what we as a whole, as an industry, how do we educate employers, and so that they can make those decisions and start those strategies. One of the other very interesting thing, as you have mentioned, identifying job, what Rangam has been working on for last couple of years. It's a patent pending technology. Just imagine when these companies and these hiring managers are placing an order for a job, and if we can tell them that this job is where someone with disability can be successful, it's a higher probability. So some of those very innovative things are happening in the industry, and we as an organization kind of contributing to those strategies, working with companies. Before we conclude, I would love to get your message for organizations and companies. You have briefly touched, but some of the your messaging to organizations where they really want to start. How do they start, and what is the pathways you are recommending to these companies and leaders when it comes to hiring people with disabilities?
It's very simple. Hiring is you're hiring any other person, hire a disabled. Do not hire him because you have to have certain number of disabled people in your organization. Hire him because he knows the job. When we are training our youth in any of our centers, the training process, the methodology, the timelines are evolved in such a manner we ensure that our candidates are no less qualified, no less knowledgeable, no less skilled as compared to any other candidates. So don't hire a disabled, hire a skilled resource. This person can be differently enabled. We have to make a certain changes with that. For example, you might have a left-handed desk when you're sitting in a classroom, or a right-handed desk when you're sitting in the classroom. It's as simple as that. So I mean, it's a very small alteration that you have to do in your general way of doing things. But hiring them, you are capitalizing on the skill sets. These people turn out to be brilliant assets. They bring in a value proposition to the organization in terms of improving the morale of the rest of the team that is there, increases teamwork. It also brings in faith into the shareholders. Overall, I'll say in one line, it makes business sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. It makes business sense. And Ravindra ji, again, thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I wish we had more time, but I would love to continue this conversation offline. And thank you for all the great work you do for people with disability. And this is amazing. The organization you are heading is doing some great headways to the future for people with disability and bringing change in the society. That's how I see it. It's just not employment. It's all about, as you said, it's all about accessibility from every angle, right? How we make those
Absolutely.
websites accessible to the products and ultimately the workplace. So again, thank you so much, and we will continue this conversation. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We will continue this conversation on disability and inclusion as a whole, as a society. And have a wonderful remaining of your day. Take care. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you. Stay
Ji.
safe,
Thank you,
everyone. Bye bye.
Bye bye.